Growing up in Tennessee, I was in and out of churches. My grandfather, he was a preacher and he dragged me everywhere. I enjoyed it and I loved Christ. I asked Jesus to save me when I was 14 years old. The Holy Spirit, he took root in me and just spread. I helped teach Sunday school and home Bible studies. I would do anything for God. My grandfather, he taught me a lot. But when I was older, I ignored what I'd learned and I just started living for myself. And it just seemed to land me in such trouble and even put me into a godless marriage. My marriage ended in divorce. My life, it just fell apart. I was stationed at Cherry Point, North Carolina, and the Marine Corps had taken me away from my family, and I didn't have anyone to talk to. One of my fellow Marines noticed, just how down I was, and he invited me to go out with a bunch of friends. And one of them was Lori Gonzalez. She had a friend, Daisy, and that was the night I met Daisy.
Life did not come easy growing up in LA projects. At age 10, I was abused by my 21-year-old cousin. For years, he tormented me with threats, made me feel worthless, until I believed he was right. I was ashamed of myself. I felt alone because no one knew the truth. I prayed to God to make it stop. It took 4.5 years for him to answer. That's when my cousin moved out. I was 15, wishing I was someone else. At 17, I began using drugs. My drug of choice was methamphetamine. I knew it was wrong, but I felt God had let me down. I did drugs for 7 years. One day, I hit bottom and finally cried, "God, what am I going to do?" Moments later, I received a phone call from my older sister, asking me to come live with her in North Carolina. I packed and was there within a week. It was a hard move. I dealt with withdrawals, weeks went by, then months, and I started to see myself in new light. One of my sister's military friends, Lori Gonzalez, invited me out and I accepted. As we picked up 2 of her coworkers, I saw Jesse in my rearview mirror. I thought he was so cute. We talked the whole night. September 2009, we were married.
We were married, life was great. Then I had my first asthma attack. It was 5.5 years in the Marine Corps, and all of a sudden I hit this wall. And we couldn't get the asthma under control. It was just demoralizing. Ultimately, it ended my Marine Corps career. I felt like I was being punished. It made me question God. So here I am, medically retired from the military. Now what? And I get a phone call from my old coworker, Lori Gonzalez. There was a job at Quantico, but we had to move, but it was at least a job.
We ended up moving to Lori's basement in Virginia when I learned we were pregnant. Our first doctor's appointment was an ultrasound. We were so excited that we were able to see our baby for the first time. The doctor's face said it all. I knew something was wrong. The baby didn't have a heartbeat. The worst part was having a second doctor come in to look for herself and agree with the results of the first. My baby was gone at 8 weeks, and I was 10 weeks pregnant. We cried and cried, and I was angry at why this happened to me, to us. I was heartbroken and asked God why.
On the day of the DNC, Lori needed help with her daycare situation and asked us to watch her daughter, Lana. It just felt like just another burden because Lana was there and I had to remain in the waiting room and I wasn't able to be there with Daisy. In the waiting room, I met Sandra, an elementary school teacher from Stafford. Her husband was there and she was waiting on him. We talked off and on throughout the day, and for some reason, I just decided to ask her about churches in Stafford, just to see if she knew any. And she actually suggested Mount Ararat.
So we ended up at Mount Ararat. I felt the Holy Spirit in worship and felt the words of God through the sermon. I wanted to learn more about God. I gave myself to Jesus on March 27th, 2011. I was ready to love myself by loving God first. I died that day and was reborn as a child of Christ. Around the same time, I was blessed with a new job at Bloom grocery store. While working, I met great coworkers, one of them, a widower, Tina Walker. She seemed sad even if her exterior was showing otherwise. We became friends quickly, and I told her about Mount Ararat. She agreed to go. She liked it. I was so happy I was able to be God's disciple by inviting Tina to Mount Ararat.
In junior high school, I met the man who was going to be my husband. On August 13, 1994, I married my soulmate, Larry. He had the best sense of humor. I loved every minute with him. Our life stretched before us. But 6 months into our marriage, my husband fell into such hopelessness from financial worry that he attempted suicide. God gave me the strength to walk through the darkness with him. At the age of 34, he had a mild heart attack. 3 months later, an acute stroke. And there shortly after, another heart attack. In June 2010, my husband had a final stroke. He stayed in the hospital for 32 days. Larry worried he was going to die there. Every day before and after work, I went to see him to encourage him. We were so happy when he was released from the hospital to enter a rehabilitation center. He wanted to be home for our 16th year anniversary. I told him we would celebrate it when he came home. 6 days after our anniversary, he came home. I saw hope in his eyes that day. It was a big change for him to depend on me for so much, but I wouldn't change that time with him for the world. After 3 weeks at home, his health started to go downhill again. I took him back to the hospital. They sent him home, saying he was depressed and needed to talk to someone. 2 days later, I awakened at 1:30 a.m. with heartburn. Larry woke up and asked me what was wrong. I told him I was going to take some medicine and that I'd be back to bed. He said okay. I fell asleep in the recliner and awoke at 7 a.m. I went into our bedroom and I found him dead. Why would God give me so much faith and hope to take him away from me? A pastor came and talked to me and told him that I hated God and I didn't want him in my life anymore. The pastor turned away from me and began a conversation with someone else. I felt alone, rejected by God and man. I was very close to suicide, but never let people know how bad the depression was. My dad and stepmom moved me to Virginia. I finally found a job at Bloom, where I met Daisy. For months, she tried to get me to come to church. If it hadn't have been for Daisy seeing what I was going through and God telling her to keep trying to get me to come, I don't know where I would be. I've been coming to Mount Ararat since September 2011. On November 13th, I stood up and asked Jesus back into my life again. It was my birthday. I wanted to thank God for giving me life. Ever since that day, I'm in a better state of mind, knowing He loves me and is willing to forgive me for not loving Him in the darkest point of my life. It's very hard, and I'm working with God to see my life through His eyes.
Just looking back on it, God was there the entire journey. Even when things looked so dark, He was there. It was all part of His master plan for us. Without God, I never would have met Daisy, would have never met Sandra, never found Mount Ararat, and Daisy never would have invited Tina to Mount Ararat. Every step was set into motion to get us all back on track. God kept a place at His table for us.